Although this video reviews the Quizizz review for quiz number 6 in AP Geog. So in this first question, we're asking for what goes to replace the missing code. Click on the image and you see that it is for the coding bar problem, same first last, which is given an array. Can you see if the first and last elements are equal? So in this first choice, this one only checks to see if nums.length is greater than 1. That's not quite it. The second option here says that yes, I am comparing the first and last elements, but it fails to address the empty list and also the list with one element inside. True, if this was in there, it would always return true, which is not always the case. So kind of by process of elimination, the really long one is the correct answer here, in which the length has to be greater than or equal to 1, and those elements are equal. Now, in the second question, over here, we're reviewing math.random. This one does have the parentheses in the correct spot. So we first evaluate math.random, generate the decimal, and we multiply it by 4, we get the numbers 0, 1, 2, and 3. With the integer cast, right? We ignore the decimals in between. 0, 1, 2, and 3. You take away 1 from everything, and so the smallest number you get is -2. Biggest number you get from there is 3 minus 2, which is 1. So that would mean this is the correct answer here. Okay, 4 numbers get generated. You go from 0, 1, 2, 3, those 4 numbers back 2 for each of them. So this is the proper answer. Oops. For question number 3, something that wasn't as commonly missed in my earlier 2 blocks, which word means the part of the program where the variable may be used. That is called scope. Some vocabulary. Now this one is more interesting, one of the more missed questions across my block 2 and block 4 classes. How many total members, including inherited members, does the subclass have? So when you click and look at this code, we can kind of ignore the top for now, so I'm displaying what you need to see. Subclass, at first glance, you would think since it's just members, which includes the variables and functions, you have 1 member variable and 2 member functions, the constructor and getBool. However, because subclass extends superclass, you inherit a bunch of information from the superclass. Specifically, that's myNum, a member variable, and getNum, a member function. Note that the superclass constructor, my mouse here is hovering over, is not inherited. Constructors are never inherited. On the AP exam, if you are ever asked, or an answer choice implies that a constructor is inherited, you know it is wrong. So in total, for subclass, we have 2 member variables, one of which is inherited, and 3 member functions, one of which is inherited. So that gives us a total of 5 members, okay? 5 total members in the subclass. As we go down here for number 5, what range best matches the expression this, okay? Notice in this version of math.random, the parentheses are left out. So you would follow the order of operations from left to right. The integer cast is applied to math.random. We always generate 0, and 0 times 5 is 0. That's the correct answer here. This was a often missed question in my blocks 2 and 4. In number 6, we see the same superclass subclass example, but now we are especially interested in member variables. So again, as we click in and see the subclass, okay, you may think the answer is 1, myBool, that one's pretty obvious, but you did inherit information from the superclass, so myNum was inherited. The constructor also gives you a big hint. I would prompt the class to fill in the blanks, right? The constructor's job is to fill in the member function, or fill in the member variables. Oh, very good. Okay, so there are 2 here. Okay, so that gives you a hint on why there are 2 member variables if you didn't see that it was at first inherited. For number 7, what is the output of said program involving subclass and superclass? We now care about the stuff at the top in void setup. Subclass is given is instantiated X is instantiated to be of type new subclass, and now we're accessing the getNum function from X. Okay, when a subclass gets created, we go down here. Okay, so subclasses my num is 3, so X is my num is 3. X is my bool is true. We go ahead and return getNum. Okay, that is an inherited method, so this is a legal call. And we return my num. So this system.out.println should print out the number 3. Okay, and so in this problem, my number 7, the number 3 is the correct answer. Number 8, how many member functions, including inherited members, does subclass have? So in this case, right, some of you may think it is 2, okay, and then mistakenly we could think it's 4, right, but that would mean we inherited the constructor from Superclass. What really happens is we inherit just one function, getNum from Superclass, and we have our own constructor, we have getBool. So there's a total of 3 member functions for the subclass. The answer here in my question 8 is 3. Moving on to number 9, if subclass is encapsulated, and this word means labeling it as public and private, my bool should be labeled as blank. When you click here, okay, my bool, notice right now it's not labeled, it's not encapsulated. My bool is a member variable, and it should be labeled private. I didn't go over that much in class. It is not expected that you know encapsulation for this week's quiz, but for the following one you will have to know it. And you should know that as general guidance, member variables are private, member functions are public, and that includes a constructor. Okay, so in this particular question we're interested in my bool that belongs to a subclass. The answer here is that it should be labeled private. Number 10, what is the best replacement for code not shown in getID? Okay, now this idea you will need to know for your quiz on Friday. Getters look a certain way, and setters look a certain way. In getID here, right, for this class lol student, getID right here, okay, getID, so that's the bottom one, right? From what you know of function headers, that should be enough to get you through this question. If you're looking for the return type, okay, it is of type integer, so you know your answer must return an integer. You know it can't be this answer, and it can't be that one. It has to be one of these two. And when you look at the code again, right, you have to make a decision between ID or my ID number. Click on here, and within the scope of getID, there does not exist an ID variable. Okay, there is one available locally in these two functions, but not in getID. So that leaves you one last choice, which is my ID number. That is a member variable that is accessible in all instances of a lol student class. That is what you must return. The answer here is return my ID number. Getters return the values of their member variables. Moving on to number 11. Okay, if base class is encapsulated, base class should be labeled as, so you click here, right, base class up here. Notice we have two constructors. You have an overloaded one, and then you have the no argument version. It's asking you about this constructor. What should it be labeled as? Go back to the rule of thumb I mentioned earlier in the video. Member functions should be labeled public. Since constructors are member functions, this should be labeled as public. Okay, and again, that will be on the next quiz, not this Friday's quiz. For number 12, what the best replacement for code not shown for setID should be, okay, so again, if you look at the return type, right, the return type is void, meaning there is no return statement. SetID takes in a value ID, okay, so you know it can't be in this problem for the setter, okay, you don't return anything, so it can't be these two answers. It must be one of these two. When you look back at the problem, okay, ID is temporary. That is a local variable. It gets passed in, it does its job, and then it disappears. What is persistent and what remains with a lol student is my ID number. So you should be storing ID into my ID number, not the other way around. although this is legal, my ID number, storing it in ID, a local variable, doesn't do anything. As soon as that constructor or that setter is done executing, ID disappears. So that it gets stored nowhere, right? It disappears. This is the proper answer. My ID equals ID for a set ID method. Going on to number 13, if base class is encapsulated, okay, meaning labeled public or private, int n should be labeled as, okay. So inside base class, we're over here, our eyes are drawn to the parameter or local variable. If you go back to the slides, you'll see that only class members should be labeled as public or private, or neither, in which case it defaults to be public. And in this case, we have a local variable, okay? Local variables are never declared public or private. This is the neither category. So that is the correct answer here. Since int n is a local variable, a parameter, it doesn't need to be labeled, it shouldn't be labeled public or private. Number 14, the best replacement code for this in this thing, lol student int ID, okay, that's here, right? The constructor for lol student takes in an ID what should be in there. Then I ask the class, what is the job of constructors? And then you say to initialize member variables. You only have one member variable here, my ID number. So your code should look like this one. Notice it's the same answer as the setter, my ID number equals ID. User tells you the ID, you store it into the member variable, my ID number. Number 15, which of the following is a true statement about encapsulation? Okay, encapsulated programs have fewer lines of code than unencapsulated programs. Not quite, lines of code are the same. Encapsulated programs run faster than unencapsulated programs. Not necessarily true. Okay, encapsulated programs use less memory than unencapsulated programs. Not quite. Encapsulated programs are easier to modify and improve than unencapsulated programs. I believe this is the answer I was trying to get at. This was going back to the Splatmaster 4 story, right? You're a game developer using your blob class. Let's double check that in case I tell you the wrong thing. Okay, show answer. Let me scroll down. Yep, that is the correct one. Surprisingly, most of these later questions people had not a big problem with. Okay, even though this one, right, a little wordy, given the following class declarations and enhanced item in item obj equals new enhanced item in a client class, which of the following statements would compile? Okay, College Board loves asking these kinds of questions. So enhanced item extends item. This is the child, that is the parent. And it looks like we have x and y variables. Okay, item, right, the base class has x. That's what's special about it. And then enhance items, right, inherits that x coordinate from item, and it has its own y coordinate. Okay. And we look at these methods. Okay, one is not legal. Right? Notice that .y no longer works because this is now encapsulated code. Notice you're trying to access a private member variable. With encapsulation, we can't access private member variables outside the class. That's what it means by client class. So 1 does not work. 2 and 3, though, are okay. An enhanced item has obviously a set y. It's right here. Okay. And I guess not obviously, it inherited set x from the item, right, the parent. So that's actually okay. 2 and 3 are okay in this problem. 1 is not and causes an error. So you move by elimination, right? 1, 2, anything involved 1, you know is not right. So it has to be one of these two. Turns out 3 also works. And you may have been tempted to pick 2 only, forgetting that inherited, that get x method was inherited from the parent. Okay, this is okay. This is the right answer. This one, okay, is worthy of some discussion in class. As your Starfield assignment needs to have just one array. I will be looking at code, and if you use not one array, let's say you use 2 arrays, one for your oddballs, one for your particles, you won't get full points. You must store both oddballs and particles in the same array, and there's a couple slides going over that. It's related to this question, which is why I mention it. So, given that oddball extends particle, which declaration and initialization would create an array that can hold both oddballs and particles? This is the correct answer. Um, Particles on the left, particles on the right. These other ones, let's see, particles storing oddballs, yes, that's fine. This one's not true, right? Because not all oddballs are particles. No, I misspoke. Not all particles are oddballs. Okay, it's the child-parent relationship. And then this one's okay, but you can't store particles in an all oddball array. It has to be this one of type base class. So I mentioned to the even blocks, right? There's kind of an analogy here. You, as the child, right, can live with your parents for the first part of your lives, and then later, like you seniors going on to college, right, you live by yourself or live with housemates. You don't want your parents to go with you for college. So, that initial part of your life matches this answer choice. Yes? Hopefully that's a useful analogy. Oh, small typo. So if oddballs look and behave differently from particles, which line of codes are unnecessarily duplicating an inherited member of particle? So lines 9 and 10. So take a look here. One of the slides I guess I would have mentioned in class would be this is a very typical error for inheritance. Notice I have a particle. It has these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 member variables. Beginners often redeclare those member variables, forgetting that they are inherited. Okay, so this is no good. Okay, lines 9 and 10 can be crossed off. They already exist. You inherited from particle because oddball extends particle. Make sure you know that for the quiz. So that is unnecessary and duplicating. Very bad. Last question, okay, 19. Based on the code shown, how many initializations would the oddball constructor be expected to perform? So when you click here, right, the oddball constructor at the moment, you could say 0, right, forgetting that you've inherited stuff. The oddball constructor must initialize its member variables. You inherited 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, and thus they must be initialized. Look back to the Stormcloud class as the one example I went over, okay? We inherited what, 7 or 8 member variables, so we must do the same here. And that's why in this last question the answer here is 5. That wasn't commonly missed. Make sure you review the slides, especially those talking about common inheritance mistakes about redeclaring member variables, and also be sure to go over the Starfield assignment slides that have common mistakes that give you a helping hint. I also mentioned to my earlier blocks that Piazza is a great resource, so after you're done watching this video, you should make sure you know your Piazza login and post and ask for help on here, especially with regards to arrays 4, or you have broken code in your Starfield assignment. So let's do it like a quick search, right? Starfield. So here, right, someone asked for help on what's going wrong, and someone answered. Let's say you wanted help on arrays 4, right? And so there was a hint on has 77, okay? 2 people kind of posted on that, and a student responded last year, and then here, either me or Mr. Simon gave a response. It's worth thinking about what's weird about this one. I also emphasized in class that is everywhere and combined arrays are great problems, so you should probably study those for your quiz on Friday. I hope someone posts to Piazza during my time away. I'll have the app downloaded on my phone, and I'll get a notification and likely reply quite quickly. Email me for individual problems. Otherwise, post to Piazza, and good luck on studying. Be nice to myself.